Good evening again, everyone. I think that's that's 6:10. I think we will just get started if folk are okay with that. Leslie's here through in Parliament with me today, and she'll keep admitting people as they come in. But I think we are best getting started. It is likely that people will log on as they get in from work or whatever else they're doing. So they're more than welcome to do that. And it's it's very much a come in and as you please anyway. So I suppose that also includes the start. For anybody who doesn't know me, I'm Fulton MacGregor, the MSP for Coatbridge and Christen, and I'm absolutely delighted to be hosting this event today, which I'll come back to in a wee minute. Just a couple of very brief housekeeping things. We're all 2 years into this online game now, so I guess that these are less relevant than they were maybe in the initial period, but just for anybody who doesn't usually have online meetings and stuff, it's really good if people could keep their microphones off when they're not speaking, because it will reduce any feedback. And I think that actually so far that looks like everybody's done that. So for nearly 70 odd people here, that's a pretty good record, and I'm getting the impression that most people are pros at the online meetings. But that's really the main bit of housekeeping. The other thing is as well, we obviously want this to be quite informal, so feel free to come and go. You can choose whether to have your camera on or not. There's no issue like that. If you prefer to sit with your camera off and just listen to the presentations, that's fine by me. Same if you want to have your camera on. There's absolutely no issue there. So as I say, I'm really delighted to be hosting this event. This is an area that I've become more interested in within the last 6 months or so, after having an initial discussion with one of our speakers tonight, Dr. Mark Harper, and becoming more fascinated about the potential benefits of cold water swimming or cold water therapy, and what's got various names in a public health context. And that's why we're starting off this process of having the discussion at the Scottish Parliament. I'm delighted tonight that we've got a great lineup of speakers who I'll go through in a minute. But I know on the call tonight we've got representatives from health boards, we've got people here from government, we've got MSP offices, and we've got many of you members of the public who are interested in this. So we're really trying to start a discussion tonight about what impact that cold water therapy while swimming can have in a public health capacity, given the NHS boards and workers are really struggling coming out of a pandemic. We need to look at ways that perhaps that can be helped and be a bit more innovative. And I think that's where I would like the discussion to be around tonight. And when you hear about people who do this and are a lot more professional than me, if you like, or maybe professional's not right, but more regular than me, the benefits seem pretty clear. But that's very much anecdotal, and we'll hear tonight from folk who have done more research to actually look into that to see whether these benefits can be established scientifically. And I'm really looking forward to some of the speeches around that. Of course, around all of this as well, we do know that getting into open water has got risks and dangers, and I think it would be irresponsible if that wasn't mentioned as well. And I know that everybody who engages in this particular interest is very, very mindful of that, and I know that all the speakers will speak to it tonight, including the Scottish Government's partner in water safety, the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, and we've got Barry from there. And I want to apologise to Barry, because on the agenda that you'll see, it just says a representative from the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, and that's because we didn't know to quite late on who it was going to be, but it is indeed Barry, and I know that he'll do a fantastic presentation. So the lineup for tonight is, I'm not going to take up too much of your time, because MSPs, we do like to speak, but I know that most folk here don't want to hear from me. They want to hear from the experts, and that's who I'm going to pass you on it shortly. But the agenda in front of you is we're going to hear from Dr. Mark Harper from Brighton and Sussex Medical School, and he'll talk a wee bit about the scientific areas that he's been involved in, the studies that he's been involved in around cold water immersion. And then Mike Morris from the recently established chill therapy, which is popping up across the UK, and I believe there is 2 perhaps in Scotland at the moment, including 1 in Fife, and again, very, very interesting area of development. Calum MacLean from the Outdoor Swimming Society Ambassador, and if anybody follows Calum's work on social media, you'll see he's very much an ambassador of outdoor swimming. Rachel Ashe from Mental Health Swims, again another area of real growing interest, and Rachel is actually going to, she's got a couple of people who want to speak about their experiences as well, so she's going to use some of her presentation time to go for that purpose as well, so we'll get to hear from some people who have participated in the mental health swims. And then, as I say, we've got Barry at the end from the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, who will go through some of the safety advice that is crucial when entering open water. I do know that the other speakers are very big on safety as well, and will likely mention that in their presentations. I've said to each speaker to have roughly 10 to 15 minutes. Some might be a bit less, some might be a wee bit more, but in that sort of time range. And then at the end, we'll have a period of hopefully about half an hour or so for a question and answer session. There's no need for people to stay beyond as long as they want. If there's one particular speaker you want to hear, or 2 or whatever, or you've got other commitments, that's fine. We're very much an open door. I will do a wee bit of summing up at the end, I think, where we might be able to take the next steps with this, and I do hope that people are able to stay for that. I will try and have us finished by 7:45 latest tonight. I'm aware that there's a football match on involving a Scottish team in Europe, so I am aware that will be kicking off at 8 o'clock. So I will try and have the event finished before then. But so without much further ado from me on that note, I will now pass over to Dr. Mark Harper, who I believe has got some slides as well. Mark, over to yourself. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much, Fulton. I do have some slides. Hopefully they are showing up now on your screen. Is that correct? Can you see them all? Yeah, okay. Right, well, I feel privileged to be here, to be able to address such a wide, varied, influential and interested audience. And thanks to Fulton, who, before I first spoke to him, wasn't a cold water swimmer or outdoor swimmer, but he totally got it, totally got the reasons why it might be of help as a public health intervention. And now I think I can safely say he's become he enjoys it himself. He's become a cold water swimmer, which is fantastic. So anyway, what I'm going to do, I'm going to quickly go over a little over the physiology of why does it have this effect? What is the effect of cold water on the body? I'm going to say why this might be helpful for mental and physical health, give some of the evidence from our studies, give some evidence from individual experience, and say how this might work in a public health context. So it might seem a bit odd that here I am, an anaesthetist, talking about cold water swimming and mental and physical health. The reason for this is my first research career was actually in stopping people getting cold during operations. Now, what happens during operation, although your brain hopefully is anaesthetized by a very clever anaesthetist, the body isn't, and the body still reacts as if you're actually having a saw cutting through your leg when you have an amputation. And this sets off a stress response. The stress response is really important. It's an evolutionary response. It saves us, it keeps us alive. But you can have too much of it. And after an operation, you can have, the natural reaction is actually too much of a stress response. And the greater the stress response, the greater the number of complications. And one of the things that exacerbates the stress response is getting cold. And so that's one of the things that as anaesthetists we're constantly trying to do, is to reduce that stress response. So, and then this is, what we want to do is keep that stress response in what I would call a physiological or good zone, rather than going into the pathological or bad zone. And the main driver for this is probably that is, to my mind, is inflammation. Now, inflammation, again, is a part of the stress response. It's really important. It's a load of chemical substances are released by the body to mobilize the immune defenses and repair injury. And behind this and behind the stress response lies the autonomic nervous system. So this is the background nervous system, and it's the fight flight, which I'm sure everyone's heard about, which is the sympathetic side of it, and this gears us up for action, and the rest and digest, which or the parasympathetic, which helps us to recover. So, and with greater sympathetic or fight flight, we have greater inflammation, and with greater rest digest, we have better system of repair, or it goes into the repair mode. What we want to do, so you can think of the sympathetic as the accelerator, so you can take your foot off the accelerator is one way to reduce stress and reduce inflammation. And the trouble is, inflammation underlies so many of our modern lifestyle illnesses, everything from type 2 diabetes to high blood pressure. And we can also put on the brake to this stress response and this inflammatory response by stimulating the parasympathetic, the rest digest mode. So yeah, ultimately with the inflammation, we don't want it to be burning up. What we want to do is nice and toasty warm by the fire, to have just that right balance of inflammation. And fortunately, cold water swimming can help with both of these. So the first way it can help is that it can take the foot off the accelerator. So when you get into cold water, it is a stress on the body. And I say, exposing yourself to stress is not a bad thing. In fact, it's a good thing if you're using your muscles. That's how you build your muscles up, for example. And it's the same with all the systems in the body. We want to use them. We want to tone those muscles. And going into cold water on a regular basis, as you do it on a regular basis, your response to the cold reduces. So your peak levels of stress go down, and also your base levels of stress go down. So what happens is you're spending less of your time in that bad pathological zone. So unlike these Japanese pilgrims who are going into the cold water for the first time and looking very stressed, you become like one of the participants from our chill courses in Devon who is smiling and loving it. So this is a long-term effect, and the effects of adaptation can last quite a while after any course is finished or any adaptation program is finished. What it also does, every time you get into the water, you can also have an immediate effect on inflammation by putting your face in the water. So it's the face specifically, not the whole head, just the face. And what this does is it directly stimulates the parasympathetic, the rest digest nervous system, and puts the brake on that inflammatory stress response. So just getting your face into the water will have a positive effect every time you go into the water. Now, from my point of view, when I first started reading about this, I was thinking, oh yes, as an anaesthetist, if we could put patients through a cold water adaptation program before surgery, they would have less of a stress response, less of an inflammatory response, they'd have less complications. Now, this is still, so I published a paper on that, but it remains a theoretical concept. But shortly after this, armed with this knowledge, I came across a newspaper article. This was just in the newspaper, it wasn't in any medical journal, which was pointing out that stress or the depression, a lot of depression is associated with inflammation. Now, by this stage, I had been going cold water swimming myself for a while, and I knew how good I felt after a swim, and I wasn't depressed. And then knowing that cold water swimming reduces inflammation and depression is associated with inflammation, I thought, well, perhaps we could treat depression with cold water swimming. And luckily, around this time, I met a guy called Professor Mike Tipton, and he had been the writer of many of the papers that I've been reading about understanding physiology. He's a physiologist, professor of physiology, and he's done amazing work in this field. He literally wrote the book on it. And I put this theory to him, and he said, "That's very interesting. I like the sound of that. There could be something to it." And then a few weeks after that, he was approached by so Mike's the guy at the back there with the bald head, and in front of him is Chris Van Tulleken, who many of you might recognise, a TV doctor, particularly if you've got young kids who love Operation Ouch. And Chris came to him. He was going to do a program called The Doctor Who Gave Up Drugs, and he wanted to know, was there anything cold water swimming could be used to treat instead of drugs? And Mike said, well, funnily enough, I've met this guy who's got a theory. So with the might of the BBC, the might of the BBC found Sarah, who's in the stripy jumper there, who this photo was 24 years old. She'd been on antidepressants for 8 years. She had a young daughter. She was a single mum. She really didn't want her daughter growing up seeing her mum popping pills. So she volunteered to come along. We went into Mike's lab and did a few. You can adapt really quickly. It takes 6 sessions, and it doesn't actually have to be that cold. It's anything under 20 degrees centigrade, which is the warmest any water in the UK really gets even in the summer, outdoor water. So anyway, she had a few swims in the pool, adapted over the day. You just warm up in between. And then the next day we went out for a swim in the local lake. And I mean, it sums it up. Swimming and socializing have helped me more than pills ever did. A few months later, she was off her antidepressants, and she remained so till the last time I had contact with her, which was probably about 6 months ago, at the beginning of the year. Now, I said to Chris, while we were going through this, I said, what if it doesn't work? My whole theory is blown apart at that point. He said, don't worry, it always works on TV. And so what we needed to do really was take it out into real life. And so with the help of Mike Morris, who'll be hearing from later, who's put together these brilliant courses, we did a study where we recruited people with clinical anxiety and depression using the same scoring systems that GPs and other healthcare organizations use to measure it. And we took them through an 8-week course or an 8-swim course of swimming in the sea in North Devon. And we saw the changes. And the bottom line is it had a remarkable effect. About 70 or 80% was showing recovery. And what you get with the pills, with the classic, the Prozacs, you get probably a 60% response, but that is not a 60% cure rate. So these people were clinically depressed or anxious, and then they, by the end of the course, they were in the normal range. Now, this is just a feasibility trial. We need to do a bigger trial, and there's a randomized controlled trial in action, but this certainly shows that there's something to what the enthusiasts such as myself and many other people think there is. And so we recently published this just a few weeks ago. This was published, the first use of outdoor swimming as a clinical intervention. But I think it's important, and particularly when we're talking about it in the context of a public health measure, that we don't see it just as a treatment. It's part of a package to prevent illness, and it's part of well-being. And so to this end, what we thought next was, we come through the pandemic and there was a lot of stress, a lot of burnout among healthcare workers. I mean, I know this from personal experience. So I thought, perhaps if we set up a course for healthcare workers, they will, that will help them with burnout and general well-being. And we did indeed find that. So we ran a few courses, some in Cornwall, some in London, and we did indeed find that markers of burnout were reduced and markers of mental well-being were improved over the course of a course. And then another thing is teenage mental health. This isn't torture. This isn't waterboarding. Honestly, this is someone doing it voluntarily. So the point of this is, I took teenage, so in the UK, pre-pandemic, 14 to 70% of 11 to 19-year-olds had one criteria for a mental health disorder. I mean, that's dreadful. And there was a 6% increase in depressive symptoms over the pandemic. So the next, I thought, can we do something with teenagers? And so this is from my middle son's school, and So I ran a half-day program. I've done this twice now. I ran a half-day program. We have a bit of fun, and we show, this is showing the effect of the parasympathetic nervous system. So you put your face in the cold water, and it's brilliant. Your pulse rate goes down. You take it out a few seconds later, maybe 10, 15 seconds, and the pulse rate goes down. It shows the effect of the nerve, on the cold on the nervous system. And then we all went for a swim. And what we found was, what we did with this was just a measure of mood, and it's a measure of acute mood. And what we found is that this was improved pre and post swim. And both occasions that I've done it, these teenagers, measuring their score on a validated scale, it's called total mood disturbance, was reduced from one to the next. Before and after the swim. And and again, the kind of feedback we get, this is just what we get from all our feedback. And this is some stuff from Mental Health Swims. We did a survey of them. And, this is typical of the feedback we get. It resets everything, tidies up the inbox of my mind, calms anxiety, helps with sleep. So we've got a lot of anecdotal evidence as well that it has this immediate mood effect and this long-term mood effect for people. But inflammation, as I mentioned earlier, is connected with a whole lot of other medical conditions, and all listed here. I don't need to go through them, but interestingly, they're also mainly conditions which are associated with modern lifestyles. And we knew people were out there using cold water swimming for, as kind of self-medication. So we sent out a survey and said, and the conditions and we got over 700 responses, which was remarkable, I think. And what we got back is the vast majority of that big grey area were using it for mental health, but those who were using it for other conditions were exactly those conditions that we thought that are related with to inflammation. And what is even better is that the majority, so all but that little red piece of pie, all these were getting at least some benefit, and the majority were getting a lot of benefit from it, or a significant benefit from it. And so this is just an example of some of the things that we have been looking at. I mean, I've written a book recently about this, and for this, I interviewed a load of people who have, experienced the benefits of cold water swimming. And what's really remarkable is a lot of them came for other reasons, like Martin, who you can see there. He's in the orange hat with his thumbs up. He came because he was lonely, depressed. He had chronic pain from multiple back problems, and he said, pain is a lonely place. Anyway, he came along to fix his depression and ended up really helping his back pain as well. And and these stories are all there. The one in the other side at 9 o'clock, you see in the green hat, that's Martin. He suffered from fibromyalgia. He was anxious, he says, but it's helped him, and he's been so moved that he's now become a chill coach himself on these courses. And also, we have this problem of COVID. This is a picture of COVID lung. There is a massive problem with COVID. There's a massive problem with long COVID. The thing about COVID is, although it's transmitted through the air, through the respiratory system, and some of the most dramatic symptoms of respiratory is actually a disease of inflammation. It's symptoms, everything comes down to inflammation. So in theory, by the effect of the cold water swimming, the cold water adaptation could reduce both long-term and short-term effects. So when you're exposed to COVID, its effect on you may be less because it doesn't set off this allergic reaction, this massive inflammatory response. And interestingly, some of the better treatments, such as dexamethasone, they're anti-inflammatory drugs. They're not antivirals or anything like this. And this, this is all backed up. There was just today in the headlines of my medical news I get every day. Regular exercise can boost COVID vaccine effectiveness. What is going in the sea? It's regular exercise. COVID-19 infection increases cardiovascular health risk. Well, this is another thing. Cardiovascular system, it's the problems with your heart health and your circulation, a lot of that is due to excessive inflammation. And also we're seeing a big increase in inflammatory arthritis. It's yet another thing to back up the theory that, well, maybe now is the time to bring in a simple, effective treatment for anti-inflammatory treatment. And I think it's best to think of this in terms of the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is lifestyle medicine. And you've got all these little all these pieces of it, and it's more complex than that. But this basically has it. And what you get with outdoor swimming is a whole package of benefits. I really think we've got good evidence that the cold itself has a really profound effect. But not only that, you're getting community, reducing social isolation. We know improves mental health. And physical health. You're getting exercise, you feel a sense of autonomy. Blue therapy, being out, seeing the sea is effective. Green therapy, that's also effective. All these things all packaged up in one. And most importantly, this is what gets people coming back. Being in that sense of community. A lot of the people I've spoken to say, well, they only went on the, they had to go to the course every week because they just let their friends down if they didn't. And it's this kind of thing which keeps coming back to. It's like a diet. The most effective diet is the one that you keep doing. And that's what you get, I think, with outdoor swimming. The problem is that this is Jonathan Miller talking about treatment for his father's Alzheimer's. He eventually died of Alzheimer's himself. And it's not a high-tech thing. The trouble is health services or health research bodies want to fund the big machines, but you could take a robot that takes out your prostate. It seems that the best studies show it gets you home from hospital for 1 day earlier, but you could fund the whole chill program. You could support the mental health swims and do a whole load of research, provide infrastructure, all for the cost of for years, and you could provide all that for the cost of one robot prostate machine. And this is it. And I think the whole body aspect of cold water swimming is summed up here. This is Caroline. She really helped us. She works with the Devon Partnership Recovery College, who really helped us find people and really supported the course. And she did the course herself, and her diabetes or her pre-diabetes reversed. Her blood pressure went down. She lost weight, and she just felt better. She's our poster girl for lifestyle medicine, really. And this is it. What you see is this is Kirsty and the two pictures who spontaneously sent us a before and after photo from one of our chill courses. She's also become a coach now. She's been so motivated by it. She's become a coach for the chill therapy sessions. And you just see those pictures of the other people on our courses in Devon. It really does have an effect. So as a public health measure, well, there are a few things to think about. Water quality, that's a big thing at the moment, but there's yes, water quality, that's something governments can do. That's something that is a public health issue. Legislation to open up access and absolve. I think it's a lot of the problem is that people feel liable, so remove liability. If people go swimming, it's at their own risk. But then we come to risk. Now, actually, interestingly, risk is part of the thing. And people often say, it's so good that I got through, I really feel I've achieved something. And certainly Sarah, what is the most difficult thing she'd ever done. But at the same time, we want to reduce risk, and we've got to make it safe. And this is, so while we're reducing liability for that, we really want to make it safe. And this is where infrastructure could be put in. Places to get out is the most important thing. If you can get into almost any water, can you get out of it easily? And this is where mental health swims come in. They provide a group of people. Always swim with somebody. They provide a group of people and support people who are trained to look after this group of people and make sure people are safe. And chill, Mike stuff. This is the big aspect of it. the courses is the safety and giving the people the confidence, but the appropriate level of confidence so it remains safe. So it's really important that we've got Barry talking later about safety as well. And this is, I put this in an article I wrote recently for New Scientist. And well, that's it. We haven't got much time. I have written a whole book about it. So if you want to know more about that, that's fine. Or if you don't want to buy the book, don't want to read the book, you can contact me through my website, or you can see me on Instagram sometimes. I don't do very much of it, and occasionally Twitter. So I hope that, I'm sorry it was really quick. I hope that gives you a background of why I think cold water swimming is a really positive thing and can be a really effective public health measure.
Thanks very much for that, Mark. And I can see some people clapping, so that was absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much. And you know, I think you were very polite and cautious when you asked me about if it would be appropriate to share your book, and I said of course it would be, and I think that's absolutely fine. You've done a lot of work in this area, and it's important that when we hold these sort of meetings that people can have access to you know where they might want to get more information when they hear something. So I am very happy with that. We'll move on quickly because although you called it a brief run through, Mark, it was still quite long, but I'm being very lenient as chair. So we'll move on quickly to Mike Morris, who runs the chill courses that Dr. Harper referred to in his own presentation. Mike, I'll pass to yourself if you're needing any slides or anything. Leslie will be able to help. Thank you.
Thank you very much, both of you. Thanks, Mark. My name is Michael Morris. I am a Coast Guard, a beach lifeguard, director of Exmoor Open Water Swim and Croyd Ocean Try. So I met Mark in Bristol in 2020, and we went for a tapas, and we had an idea that we could roll out and do some courses which would embrace people into cold water swimming, and so therefore chill therapy CIC was born, and that was in 2020, and we did that first research which has just been published, and we're taking people with mental health issues and long-term conditions such as Mark said. Come on to 2 years later, we've now got 10 hubs throughout the UK, and as Fulton said, we've got 2 in Scotland, Perthshire, East Lothian. They just completed a course in Belhaven Bay, East Midlands, Worcestershire, East Kent, Brighton, Dorset, North Devon, South Devon and Cornwall. The moment we've got 100 people from the NHS going in on a well-being course down there all through the week in Cornwall. And again, as Mark said, the results have been quite stunning about how much better people feel, how much less burnt out they are. And it's been, as I say, a really, really wonderful journey. Mark asked me to sort of say, well, what do we do? And I will explain just after this little video, if Leslie can play it, what actually we do on a chill course. Roll the video if you can. So you can see, I don't think there's any music coming through. We basically meet in the car park and we talk theory. Don't know what that is. Oh, that's nothing to do with it. That's an advert. Ah, there we go. And then we go down to the beach and then we do some stretching just to get going. We also at this stage do some breathing, which is really, really important. And we feel that if you get used to breathing slow, meaningful breaths, that then when you go into the water, it's going to be a lot less stressful on the body. And we really think that this breathing actually makes them not only happy in the sea, but it goes into their everyday life. And we really believe that controlling that means that you control many other things. And it's in a way empowering. So, oh, we'll just cut it there if you want. Just cut it. I think that's just when we're on the telly at some stage. Cold water swim course. What do we do? Well, it's an 8-week course, and we have the theory, and we cover things like tides, rip currents, risk assessments, hypothermia, what to wear, what the weather is doing, how we can, in a way, basically be safe. And it's just really, really important for us, certainly as a Coast Guard and a beach lifeguard, for us to be really, really safe in the water. And then after they've done this 8-week course, they can carry on doing their swimming, going with their group. And that's what we're finding, how sustainable these courses are. So the course itself would only cost about £90. But not only are you learning how to swim, how to stay safe, but it's a whole new way of life. And for that £90, invariably, all the participants that we have, I would say well over half, probably about 60 to 70%, carry on going into the water, and all the good stuff that happens to them will carry on happening. And they've found a new way of life. And as Mark was saying, Caroline was pre-diabetic before. She no longer is. She's lost a lot of weight. She's feeling good. And this happens, you know, there are so many sort of anecdotal stories. There's a lady that was on one of the pictures that Mark showed us. She had 19 panic attacks every day, and this was reduced to 1 or 2. And we think that being able to control the breathing as she went into the water, that transposed, as I say, into everyday life, and she was able to cope so much better in everyday life. What are we doing really during the 8 weeks? We're teaching them how to be safe. We're giving them a safe environment, really, whereby we allow the sea to do the therapy. We don't talk about mental health issues. We don't counsel. We're just there to make people safe. And we have things like rescue boards and tubes, so that therefore it gives them the confidence to get out of their depth and to go where they haven't been able to go before. And they feel good about it because we're there, we can help them. And then during those 8 weeks, which is actually quite a long time if you think about it, they gain so much confidence that then after the course, as I say, they're able to continue. As I say, you know, so many people carry on and after they've done the course, and it's just wonderful to see. And again, when we think about the cost, how much it costs to do these courses, it's not a lot, and it's so life-changing. Now, I'm aware that Mark did possibly, I don't want to get in trouble with Fulton, so I'm not going to talk very much longer. I'm just going to read a feedback form, which is, we've got literally hundreds of these forms, and the same thing happens again and again, and it's repeated. So this goes out after they've done the course, and they obviously hopefully fill it in. First question: can you describe anything you've particularly liked about the course? And this lady replies, a great course with fantastic instructors who helped with our confidence and kept us safe. Can you describe anything you have not liked about the course? It wasn't long enough. Well, that's okay. Has anything changed for you as a result of doing the sea swimming course? Joined other groups in the area and continued to swim. Do you think it has had an impact on your mental health? And if so, what ways? Yes, a very positive impact on my mental health. I've met people who have similar issues. I've gained confidence, and I'm even considering doing the Exmoor swim in September. Do you have any suggestions for us about the course? Keep doing them, make them longer, although I appreciate you need to give other people the opportunity to attend. Got that right. I would fully recommend to anyone of any age and any ability. Has this course been life-changing for you? I was in a very dark place before this course and attended with a peer support worker who was amazing, picked me up and took me to Putsborough every week. Being in the water, spending time with people with similar issues and seeing the improvement in everyone's confidence and self-esteem and finding my mental health improving, yes, it has been life-changing. Still a way to go, but with the help from the girls and the guy from Chill and Devon Learning Recovery, the dark place is much brighter. Thank you. Are you still swimming and dipping? Yes, she is. And then is there any other information? Just say a big thank you for running these courses. They really are a lifesaver for people. And that really sums up what we're trying to do, what we are doing. And long may it continue. Back to you, Fulton.
Thanks, Mike. Again, that was really good, and I'll lead with a round of applause on that as well. I think that was fantastic to hear. I should have possibly said at another point I've seen it in one of the questions that the event is being recorded, because we got quite a lot of requests for that. However, I should have said, and I will say just now because obviously it's not went anywhere yet, if there is anybody who wouldn't want to be on a recording and whose camera is on or name appears anywhere, please let Leslie Mitchell know. You'll find Leslie in the chat. You can contact her direct, and we'll work our way around that to make sure that you are not on it. We're able to do these things and been able to do the online meetings. So, but the event has been recorded for folk who can't make it tonight or who have missed the start or whatever. And I've seen somebody asked a question on that. And also keep the questions coming on the chat, and I will try and ask them at the end. I see a couple there about floats and stuff like that, so we can get them asked at the end. So that's a good idea to use the chat for that purpose. So we'll now move on to Calum. Calum, are you still there? Yep, you are, Calum MacLean. I'm just going to move over to yourself. I don't know, Calum, are you using any presentations or anything?
Yes, thanks a lot, Fulton. Yeah,
okay,
I'll share my screen. Thanks a lot, Fulton. Thank you very much, everyone. I'll try and keep my presentation a bit shorter. I've got a creaky throat anyway, but I'm going to share some photos that will help kind of help explain some of the things I'm talking about a wee bit and give a bit more context. If anyone doesn't know who I am, my name's Calum MacLean. Obviously, I'm Scottish. I'm a writer and a broadcaster, an ambassador for the Outdoor Swim Society, and I'm an obsessive swimmer and dipper as well. I say swimmer and dipper because I enjoy all sorts of swimming. So I enjoy doing distances and challenging myself, but also just enjoy, being in cold water, the process of it. And so I'd like to talk a wee bit about why I do it, how I got into it, but also the situation in Scotland and maybe how we can improve it a little bit too. So there's me in winter just reading my Gaelic dictionary. It's a great place to think, being in cold water there. But it's interesting when we're talking about prescribing cold water as a thing, because I have been swimming, as a thing, as a hobby, as a pastime, pretty intensively for about 12 years or so. But it was really from about 2015 that I really got into it and spent more time doing it. And it was to use it almost as an escape. I was living in the Isle of Skye. If anyone knows Scotland, the Isle of Skye is a beautiful place. It's for people that like doing things outdoors. It's fantastic. You've got so much on your doorstep. But living there, in my job, in my kind of life, I was actually quite miserable. I was working as a journalist at the time, and I wasn't very happy, I've got to be honest. But I would use swimming and I would use getting outdoors and finding unusual and beautiful places to go swimming as a bit of an escape. I would spend more and more time doing it, and effectively it came to a point where I really wasn't happy, and I got signed off work for a couple of weeks, and I would spend my time just going out and swimming and putting myself in cold water and finding these places. It also helped spark within me a creative side, to take photos like you see this one here underwater, to make films, to make videos. If you've seen any on BBC The Social, or as a result of that, BBC Ullapa, to then, what I love to encourage people to do is to find what they love. So whether you love dipping, whether you love swimming, whether you're just getting into it and think, you just want to be a dipper. In time, I've got friends that barely swum at all, started it in winter, and then within a couple of years, they take on challenges like being part of a channel relay team. So, you can grow into it, and it can totally change your life, I think. A huge part of it, the draw for me is wild places, being overawed by the nature around us, by amazing places. For example, I live in quite a rural place, so I'm quite lucky in Scotland. I've got a lot on our doorstep. I couldn't just swim in, a beach maybe in a city every week. I think I'd get frustrated by that. So for me personally, I like the feeling of, wildness, but also the connection with nature you can get. So this is just some kelp. And we've got a huge amount of this around Scotland as well. You could just spend your time looking at what's around you in the water. So it's the process of being in the water, but also taking in everything around you. I think that also can have a huge impact and is part of the reason that people really get into it. I think if we look at Scotland, it's very similar to the UK in that the past 5 years has seen a big increase, but particularly the last 2 years, seen a huge increase in people taking to cold water, taking to outdoor swimming, and for a variety of reasons. I think the adventure aspect is part of it. I think the almost becoming evangelical is part of it. So if you're into outdoor swimming and you're really obsessed with it, maybe like I am, like a lot of people are, you tell people about it, and people, you still get a lot of people asking you, oh, that's a bit weird, or what are you doing in the cold? What are you doing in the water? Are you mad? But a lot of people now are recognizing it and hearing something about it, trying it themselves, and then becoming a bit of a convert, maybe converting others. And it just grows in that way that, you bring friends, they get obsessed with it. Maybe they bring friends, and groups grow in that way. And I'll talk a wee bit maybe about groups and how people get into it and what are the ways into it. Say, if you're not a swimmer right now, for example, there's lots of unofficial groups. For example, I think social media has been a huge driver maybe in the increase of people swimming. You've got big Facebook groups. You've got the Outdoor Swimming Society, for example, as a platform online, have a huge amount of resources and information to inspire people to do it, but to educate people on how to do it, to educate people about where you can do it, about encouraging people to do it, but to challenge yourself over time as well. And for example, Facebook groups, you see a lot of people commenting on a Facebook group, oh, I want to try outdoor swimming, how do I go about it? And very often it's through unofficial groups or just people organising their own swims. Very often on the kind of terms of being responsible for yourself is how we're seeing a lot of it, kind of people growing, swimming groups growing all around the country. I think if you live anywhere that's within quite good access to water, within 20-30 minutes, there's probably a swimming group at that body of water, whether it's a beach, whether it's a loch, whether it's a bit of a river that's safe to swim in. There's going to be swimming groups all over, and they're growing all over. In addition to that, we see groups like mental health swims, we see groups like Chill as well. There's also swimming guides, swimming coaches, people who do it as a profession, whether it's taking people on adventures with boats as safety, whether it's taking people swimming around coasts, for example, whether it's teaching people how to swim. There's a huge growth in that just in the last number of years. And I think we've seen an increase in the qualifications you can do, outdoors swimming qualifications, which is also really good. Swimming is for all is the caption of that photo. And that's really the message I want to get out there. In Scotland, we've got very good access laws. For example, you could choose somewhere, look at a map, choose somewhere and decide, oh, I want to go swimming there, and effectively do it as long as you can get there and as long as you access the land responsibly. Compared to England, they don't at all have what we've got in that aspect. So that's really good. This photo here was taken, this is Ross Edgley, who's the first man to swim around the whole of mainland Britain in 2018. So this was me at the finish. I went down to meet him in Margate, and there's 300 swimmers all converging there to meet him. So I think that was an example as well of how swimming can bring people together, as well as individual groups, and that that feeling of something shared that we all get when we go swimming, that feeling of community and belonging to a tribe almost that people get, and is another reason, that connection with other people is another reason why we've seen such an increase. You've got outliers like Ross as well, who's, you know, doing something quite amazing and encouraging other people in that way to do it as well. I think as a thing, swimming in Scotland, it's usually cold. I think I might be wrong, but I think Mark mentioned something about 24 degrees. I could be wrong there, but in Scotland, if it gets above 16, 17 degrees, I think I consider that to be almost roasting. It's never very warm. Even in summer, you'll get occasional warm patches. You'll get some bodies of water that definitely warm up. But I think because of the fact that it's cold so often, and we know it's going to be cold, shouldn't we actually just embrace that? Not everyone's going to enjoy swimming, you know, without a wetsuit on, as I do in a kind of cold location. It's not for everyone, that's for sure. I've met lots of people who have tried it in winter, decided it's not for them, or that they actually prefer the aspect of wearing a wetsuit and, you know, never having to suffer potentially afterwards. Learning to swim in cold water is a very long-term process, and it comes down to habituation and acclimatization, and it's not something, you know, you're going to want to start in winter necessarily, unless you're doing it in a very controlled and safe way and building up very slowly. So although I'm showing a photo of myself doing not very good technique butterfly in cold water, it's something that's been built up to over a very long time, over a great number of years. Anecdotally, if we're looking at it, Scotland reflects the rest of the UK, I think, in that it's mainly women doing it. This is an anecdotal thing, and obviously it's been men speaking so far. We're going to hear some volunteers, I think, who are women, but overall it's probably in groups, mainly women doing it. Do men and women get something different out of it? Do they look for something different? I think that's something interesting. One group I'd like to highlight is the Edinburgh Blue Balls, who are based, they swim at Portobello Beach in Edinburgh every single week, and they also swim other places. And I think I've got friends that are involved and go swimming with them, and they're often, you know, they're dipping, they're not maybe doing big long distances, but they're all about, they focus on encouraging men to do it, and men supporting men is their thing. And in addition to actually, you know, being in the cold water, it's a lot to do with conversations and sharing issues and having someone that maybe understands what you're going through. And I think they use the cold water as part of that, but they also have increased that as well to, you know, have meetups. They go maybe for 5k runs or 5k walks, and you can see it's grown from what was really a small number of people doing it to sometimes a huge amount of people, which shows that there is a great interest in it. You know, there is an appetite for it. If you make something available to people, they will come and do it. I think one thing I forgot to pick up on actually is when I was talking about Scotland having good access, one thing I think we still maybe don't quite have is a swim culture in a lot of ways that other places do. You've got pockets, you get the Edinburgh Blue Balls, you get the Fibbies in Broughty Ferry in Dundee, the oldest swimming club in Scotland, certainly, maybe in the UK. They swim outdoors. So you've got these small pockets, but overall I think we need a bit of a culture shift. And I was in Ireland recently, and I think where they've got maybe lots of designated places where people recognise you can go there and go swimming, it's become maybe it's been there for a longer culture they've got maybe, so they've got it there. But one thing that I really liked was in Galway, they've got a famous diving board, Blackrock Diving Board, and also in addition to the diving board, got loads of places you can access the water from beaches. It gets deep very slowly, so you can easily walk in. It's very easy to get in and out of the water, as long as you're physically able to do that. But they've installed a series of buoys in the water along the coast at a series of intervals. So the first one's 100 meters, second one's 250, 500, 750 meters. They're not, they go along the coast. So the idea is that you can set your target, swim to one, you say, I'm going to swim 100 meters today, you can swim to it and back. The idea is you're not having to go to very deep water, because you're going along the coast. You can always, you know, tap out early and leave early if you have to. But I think simple things like that is a very visual thing. Huge big yellow buoys, simple things like that. That's won an award for encouraging people to do exercise. And I think that's what I'm a big fan of. Simplicity. What do you need to swim outdoors? In a word, you need nothing but knowledge necessarily and experience. And you can gain that through going courses, through meeting other people. you can use a lot of gear if you want to. There's nothing wrong with that necessarily, but you don't have to have that. And I think that's what I'm keen to do, is see a bit of a kind of a culture shift maybe, in people recognizing that you can do it. It doesn't have to be complicated. And yeah, it's going to hurt. It's going to be cold sometimes. But shouldn't we try and embrace that and understand the positives you can get out of it, which is what we've heard from the other presenters and what we're going to hear from some of the others. So I shall stop talking and stop presenting. Maybe pass over pass back to Fulton, and then we'll hear from some other people who maybe, like me, are quite obsessive and have become addicted to it.
Thank you, Calum. That was again really good. All the speakers so far have been absolutely excellent, and I'm very grateful for that. Rachel, now going to pass over to yourself, and I know that as well as your presentation, you're using some of your time to bring in some of the people who have been on the courses as well, who want to say a few words. So I'll pass over to yourself, Rachel. Thanks.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Leslie. Leslie has kindly said that she will deal with my slides, which was very generous. Thank you. So, hi, I'm Rachel Ashe. I'm the founder and managing director of Mental Health Swims, which I guess is proof of how great outdoor swimming can be, because that definitely didn't feel like that was going to be my story. Leslie, can you take us to the next slide, please? So tonight, we've only really got 5 minutes, because you're also going to speak to three of our amazing volunteers, but we will try and cover this in 5 minutes. So I'm going to talk about how Mental Health Swims started, what peer support is, what it's like to volunteer for Mental Health Swims. I'm going to tell you a bit about Mental Health Swims' impact, and we're going to hear from our absolutely amazing volunteers. They're all amazing, but Kelly, Catherine and Elsie have kindly come along tonight, so thank you. And then I'm going to be cheeky and tell you how you can support us. So safe spaces can empower us to live well with mental illness, and I've certainly found that for myself. So I have quite a complicated mental illness diagnosis. I have a borderline personality disorder, which is very stigmatized. I have PTSD, social anxiety and depression. So all the fun ones. I started Mental Health Swims because I started dipping in cold water and the effect it had on my mood and my ability to be able to cope with quite challenging symptoms. It was really transformative. So that is why I wanted to create a community that would welcome others like myself. Is cold water the answer to everything? I'm really sorry. I feel like I'm probably saying the wrong thing here, but I don't think it is the answer to everything. I think that it is a great thing to complement the other things that you do for caring for your well-being. So I'm mentally ill. Long term, it's not suddenly going away, but the goal of recovery, and by recovery I mean living well with mental illness, so living a full and happy life, but also still being mentally ill. So I'll always have to take medication, and I think part of our job as in fighting mental illness stigma is not to shame those who do need to take medication for the long term. And I think that's something, when we're thinking about messaging, we do need to be responsible with that messaging. I think for some people, they will be able to get off medication, but not for everyone. And that's okay. Our mission is to make welcoming spaces for people who live with mental health challenges. And you might wonder, what is a safe space for people with mental health challenges? I think, and hearing from our amazing community, is a place that has people's feelings in mind. So we don't do sharing circles, we're not therapy, but we think about the barriers people face before they even leave the house. So how do they know they're going to be able to find us on the beach? We use these giant pink pirate flags, And we also use what 3 words. So people aren't having to wander around on the beach saying, hello, are you the mental health swim group? Because can you imagine anything more uncomfortable if you live with social anxiety? We also do a lot around our messaging. We make sure that people know we're trans inclusive, that, you know, that we understand that for you, depending on your personal situation, might not want to be told to eat cake, which is something which a lot of swim groups, it's a joy for a lot of us, is to eat cake. It's a big part of it. But for some people that might be difficult. So anyway, yeah, we are together fighting mental illness stigma by creating these safe spaces where you can be who you are, as you are on the day, no expectations. And no need to mask, no need to put on a, you know, a friendly, like a smiley face when you actually just feel really rubbish. So I think I've waffled on enough on this slide. Next slide, please, Leslie. Thank you. So what is peer support? I kind of knew what it was in theory, but it was only once Mental Health Swims was really in the swing of things that I realised what it actually is. So I've just taken this from Mind Charity's website. In peer support, everyone's views and experiences are equally valued. Rather than anyone being seen as more of an expert than others, how much support you give and receive can vary depending on what feels right for you at different times. So in Mental Health Swims, we're about equality. This isn't led by professionals, it's led by, we support one another. So we do, our volunteers are there to make people feel welcome and included, to make sure they get introduced to other people, to be aware that, you know, the different challenges that people might be experiencing. So that is the purpose of Mental Health Swims. We are for people with mental illness and mental health challenges, for people with mental illness and mental health challenges. Next slide, please, Leslie. So maybe you've listened so far and you think, I would love to volunteer for Mental Health Swims. What does that mean? So at Mental Health Swims, we train all of our volunteers. It's an online course. And we do mental health awareness, cold water safety, basic risk assessment. I say basic because we're not swim coaches. That's not what we're asking our volunteers to do, but we really want to encourage good practice and safety in our community. And I think that's one way we can do it. And also volunteer well-being, because before you can put on your own someone else's gas mask, you have to put on your own first. Got a bit muddled up there. And I think it's really important that our volunteers are aware of how they're doing, because it's something that should give you energy rather than drain it. So that's something else that's really important to us. So our team, who all have lived experience of mental health challenges, we offer ongoing support and encouragement. We're always there to listen on the phone or, you know, be there on the other end of an email. We also have a team of swim host mentors. These are more experienced swim hosts who've been doing it for a bit longer, and they can offer sort of support, and they get it because they're doing it themselves. And I think that's really important. And we also organise peer-to-peer learning evenings throughout the year. And these usually have different themes. So the next one we're having is going to be a co-design session around our, oh, give me a second, my brain has, nah, what was it called? It's completely gone, but basically safety, but it's more safety in terms of, what is it? It's gone, sorry. Annoyingly, my mental illness sometimes takes words out of my head. I'm really sorry. But basically, everything that we do in Mental Health Swims, we do it together. So when an issue comes up or something's been challenging, we then bring it to a peer learning evening and we rewrite that policy, safeguarding policy. Thank you. We are recreating the safeguarding policy together. So we already have one. It's great, but we want it to be better. And how do you recreate that? You do it with people who it actually affects. And I think that is, it seems simple, but it's really important. Next slide, please, Leslie. So mental health swims today, we have 150 peer support groups across the UK and beyond, which I still find completely incredible. We're award winning. We won a Marsh Award last year for innovative peer support, which was really cool. We have over 350 volunteers now. We have 20 mental health swim groups in Scotland, and I'm excited to say there's actually many more starting soon, because we opened up applications for swim host volunteers recently, and we had loads of people apply, and so I think there's about 30, although I think the last time we looked there was quite a few more applications. I think you may end up with one on Isle of Harris, which is exciting. Anyway, next slide please, Leslie. So now I'm going to pass over to Kelly, who is one of our absolutely incredible volunteer mental health swims hosts, just to tell you a little bit about what it's like volunteering for us.
Thank you. I'm going to start just by giving a bit of my own story so you kind of know a bit of my background. My life is ridiculously busy. I work almost full-time, although some weeks it's much more than full-time work. I have 2 young children, and I have a husband who has quite poor health conditions at the moment. So I started swimming with Catherine, who you'll hear from in a minute. I think last year really was when we properly started, when Catherine moved back to the area. And I just couldn't believe the difference that it had on me. I notice a big difference if I don't get a chance to go out swimming very often, then life is just a bit harder to deal with. So as soon as I'm back out in the water, then I feel so much calmer, and it also increases my confidence a lot. I think for me, part of it might be controversial in this setting, but I think my favourite part really is after the swim, when we can just sit on the beach, chill out a bit, and you can just see in the corner of the picture there a birthday cake that I had in the summer from Catherine as well, which is great. So Catherine decided to start volunteering with mental health swims, and I thought it would be a good idea to help her out and be a co-host at Rosile, which on the current map where Rachel has just shown you is we're the furthest north at the moment, but it sounds like we're going to be beaten if there's one coming to Harris. So part of our training, as it's been mentioned, was some online training. The course was brilliant. It was so informative, and just kind of highlighted a few things that I perhaps wouldn't have considered before, particularly when speaking to people who experience poor mental health. It was a bit of an eye-opener for a lot of it, to be honest. So I'd highly recommend that if anybody is considering hosting anywhere. Then if you do it through mental health swims, then you do get very good training with it as well. I know there are quite a few groups in the area who have started up now. Nothing official, just friends meeting and things. So it's been nice to be able to pass on some advice to them as well, so that they can go out safely and look after each other too. So yeah, it's just, I've noticed a big difference in the power of supporting each other. Both our friend group who go regularly and doing the mental health swims hosting as well. So yeah, I think I'm going to pass on to Catherine now. She's got a bit to say too.
Thanks, Kelly, and hello everyone. So I'm Catherine, so I'm the other co-host at Rosile Mental Health Swim. So in the photo there was a gang of us from our last meetup in September. It also shows what I do as my day job. I work for the Marine Conservation Society. So I've always had a really big connection to the ocean. From being young, favourite animals are bottlenose dolphin, going rock pooling. And all through my life, the ocean has had that feature. But I think, as we all know, the last few years have been incredibly tough in many different ways. And I think last year, moving from the big city, moving from Edinburgh, and being able to move back up to Moray and being close to beaches, as Cal mentioned, wild beaches where, you know, we'll turn up and there'll be no one else there for miles, was just so special and amazing. And it was lovely to kind of reconnect with Kelly and go out. And actually Tuesday evenings used to be our swim times. So I changed my background. This is where we should be at this time on a Tuesday night in the summer. But what was lovely for me as well was introducing my mum to cold water swimming. Now, my mum, if anyone knew her, she was always cold, just was one of these people who was just always cold. So when I invited her to come along, we got her fully decked out in a wetsuit, booties, gloves, bobble hat, everything. And after that first swim, she was completely hooked. Sadly, after going through the menopause, she's actually suffering a lot of physical health and mental health problems as well. And she became such an advocate for going every single week. If there was a week that me and Kelly were like, no, I might not go, she was like, nope, we're going, girls. I'll pick you up in the Mini and we'll head to the beach. So there was actually a really big gang of us at New Year's this year. Big thing in Scotland, especially, I think it's now across the UK, is to go for a duke on New Year's Day. So there was about 12 of us who ran in. It was a beautiful sunny day, but it was cold, cozies and bubble hats all the way. And that was when I was tagged on social media. Again, that kind of importance of spreading the message that Speedo were raising money for this charity Mental Health Swims. So if you tagged them in your photo of your New Year's Day Duke, they would give tenner to the Mental Health Swims charity. So I figured out, right, that sounds great, I'll do that. Let's find out a little bit more. And that's when I got to know Rachel and the team, and they were recruiting volunteers. And for me, it meant so much that I was now swimming regularly with my best friend, introduced my mum, and we were all feeling these amazing benefits. You know, we always said we never regretted a swim, even if we were literally dragging ourselves out the house by the end of it. The difference, the physical difference, the mental difference was, you know, just couldn't be without it now. And I really wanted to be able to offer other people who might be sitting at home and didn't have anyone to go with. They didn't have a daughter or a best friend who was texting them to be like, let's go out, which I think is where Mental Health Swims has just been amazing, giving that structure to be able to build a community. And we now have all of these folk coming along and traveling quite a distance to come to us to be able to go for that dip, go for that chat, and that connection to nature as well is so important for me. We are in the midst of a climate and biodiversity crisis, and as someone working in the environmental sector, it's really close to burnout. You know, we've been working in an emergency setting now for a long time, and I see this across colleagues in the emergency services, whether that's for Kelly and the police, whether it's our health service. We've all been working at that level for far too long. And I think it's things like reminding people of what we do have on our doorstep, and it's just offering that bit of extra support to get people out there and getting those benefits is amazing as well. I can see a few connections coming my way, linking the day job and Mental Health Swims as well, when we mentioned water quality right back at the beginning. But for me, it really does remind me about why I do my job and why it is important that we keep doing what we're doing, because a swim in the sea does just completely change my perspective on everything. So a huge thank you to Rachel and team for enabling us to do it. We can't wait for our next meetup next month. But I'm going to stop talking now and hand over to Elsie.
Forgot to unmute. Hello, my name's Elsie. I've a slightly different role in Mental Health Swims. About 3 years ago, I developed fairly severe low back SI joint pain. And at the time, I was kind of really struggling to learn how to live with the challenges that brought with it, both the pain itself and the impact on my ability to do things. Like, for example, I couldn't take part in my normal hobbies like running and rock climbing at the time. So I decided to try wild swimming because I read about the physical and mental health benefits. At that time, I was just kind of going along and doing a few dips by myself. And I happened to hear a podcast by Rachel in which she talked about her own journey with cold water swimming and about her story about the community she was trying to create with Mental Health Swims. And it was really inspiring for me because it showed what somebody could do living with challenges in their life, which kind of gave me a lot of hope. And as well, I just thought, you know, this is amazing. I'd like to be part of this. So I dropped Rachel an email because I have some professional skills in fundraising and offered to help with the fundraising side of things. And I would say that for me, volunteering with Mental Health Swims over the last kind of 2 years, I think, or so, it's really helped me to regain confidence in myself and helped me to learn how to live well with the pain, and to realize that like living with pain didn't mean that I couldn't still be me and do all of the things that I wanted to do with my life. Yeah, so it's been like, I think, really inspiring, and being part of that welcoming, inclusive community also taught me that it's okay to live with challenges in your life and be open about them and tell people that, you know, I have long-term pain, which in the beginning was quite hard for me to talk about. So the fact that I can stand up now publicly and say it is like quite a challenge for me, and I wouldn't have done that before. So yeah, I think now, you know, I think like Rachel said, for me with my chronic pain, it hasn't. I kind of hoped it would cure the pain. It hasn't. The pain goes away when I swim for half an hour or whatever, because the cold just numbs it, which is amazing actually. I mean, sometimes that's a great thing because it gives you a bit of respite when it is bad. And you know, now I've probably regained a lot more of the activities that I couldn't do before, but I still have times where my pain is quite high and I can't do those things, and I still swim, and it's a very important part of helping me to live really well with my pain. For me, I live on the Fife coast, so I absolutely love my sunrise swims because we have some beautiful sunrises here. So yeah, I think it's just, for me, it's been really transformative. Both, but the sense of the community is just as important as the cold water. I think to help with that. Yeah, that's all.
Hi again. I have to apologise. Thank you firstly. Like, I think our volunteers are absolutely incredible, and I always feel very moved that you wanted to come and join Mental Health Swims. I have to apologise quickly because my dog has decided to jump on the bed, which you can't see behind the computer, and if he starts leaping around, I'm really sorry. So final part is how you can support us. So maybe you could come and join a swim. I especially want to say to Fulton, you should come and join a swim. I think we have one near Troon, so maybe you could come to that one. Tell your friends about us, especially if you're having a hard time at the moment, which a lot of people are. We're really friendly. We're really welcoming. All of our volunteers are amazing. You might want to find out a bit more about us. I've just put the website there for you to copy if you want. Oh yeah, Mental Health Swims Loch Lomond is another amazing one that you could go to, Fulton. You could volunteer for us. Maybe you're interested in volunteering for us. You can also, we really don't have very much money, so if you want to donate to Mental Health Swims, you can do so on our website. Or you might want to buy some raffle tickets. We've got our winter raffle at the moment. Also, tell your philanthropist friends, if you know any, and also follow our journey on Instagram on Mental Health Swims. Thank you so much for having us. I'll pass back to Fulton. Did we go over massively? I'm really sorry. Bye.
Thank you, Rachel, and to all the speakers there. That was absolutely fantastic, and don't worry about going over a bit. I think that we've all really benefited from hearing from you there, and I'd be delighted to come along to one of the swims, and the same offer would go to yourself, Mike. As an MSP in the Parliament, part of my job is to go to places and be happy to do it. And having done it at least once a week now since April, I did start in April, and I'm still going just now, although I'm down to about 2 or 3 minutes in the water at the moment. So this is my first winter. I'm really enjoying it, so I would come along, and I would be able to put in my social media to promote both the chill courses and the mental health swims. But you know, 2 of my office are on tonight as well, Leslie and Sean. And if we look through them, they won't be getting off with it either, and they'll be coming with me. So they're looking at me a bit bemused, but yes, I think they might be up for it as well. So thank you very much for that. And moving on to our last speaker then, last and certainly not least, Barry from the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service is going to say a few words, and then after that we'll come to some questions which I've been able to pick up from the chat, and a wee summary about where we might go next, because this is a topic we could obviously talk for a wee bit longer, a good bit longer about, and especially some of the stuff that we've heard today, because these are all really, really significant issues, mental health inflammation, all the other things that have been mentioned, and you know, some of the evidence that's now beginning to emerge from cold water swimming it seems to be very promising indeed. But what I'll do is I'll pass to Barry, who is the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, as I said earlier, is the Scottish Government's official partner when it comes to water safety. So thanks, Barry. Over to yourself.
Thank you very much, Fulton. If you could just let me know if you can all see the screen okay. I'll try and whiz through this quite quickly. Thankfully, quite a few of the topics have already been covered, which is really encouraging for myself that we're on the same page. So a brief introduction. In recent years, there's been a real interest and uptake of open water, or wild water swimming, as it's sometimes known. Open water swimming is safe if you take the right precautions and use the right locations. Experienced open water swimmers have a vast amount of knowledge about swimming in open water and are educated to do so. People who swim in open water infrequently, say on holiday or in the hot days we have each year, need to be informed of the risks of swimming in open water. The advice to people who are not experienced open water swimmers is to be prepared and understand the risks of open water swimming. You can quickly find yourselves out of depth and suffering the effects of cold water shock, which will impact your swimming ability. So just to go through some of Scotland's statistics, on average there are 96 water-related fatalities in Scotland each year. In 2021 there was unfortunately 105 water-related fatalities in Scotland. Scotland's drowning rate is almost double that of anywhere else in the UK. And out of the figures for last year, 58 were accidental fatalities. Recreational activities accounted for 47% of accidental fatalities, and Scotland has a vast access to water with over 30,000 lochs, and it also has many miles of rivers and an expansive coastline. Going on with cold water, as discussed earlier, cold water is defined as anything below 15 degrees. And the average water temperatures around Scotland is 12 degrees. Obviously that can vary depending on the time of year. So going through the cold water stages, I'm sure we're all pretty aware of the cold water stages, but just as a refresher for everybody, and this is what we tend to teach, cold water shock is your initial falling into cold water, which provokes an immediate gasp reflex. If your head is underwater, you'll inhale water instead of air. Initial shock can cause panic, and that stage tends to last 3 to 5 minutes. Swim failure is after 3 to 30 minutes, and swimming becomes a struggle and the body tends to go more upright in the water. You become more uncoordinated and less efficient in the water, and your sinking forces will increase. And then we move on to hyperthermia and post-immersion collapse. As I believe Mark said in the first post when we was talking about Mike Tipton's work, there's a great video with, I think it's Sharon Davies in the water, and it demonstrates the swim failure and what that actually looks like, and it's worth a look on YouTube. Scottish Fire and Rescue promotes the Water Safety Code as our main water safety guidance, and that's broken into stop and think, check for safety signage, look for hazards, ensure that there's a safe way out. Stay together, stay close. It's better to go near the water with a friend or a family member. This means that you can help each other out if there's a problem. Float to live. If you fall in, float until you can control your breathing. And call 999 or 112 in an emergency. If you see someone in danger, don't enter the water. Look for rescue equipment such as throw lines or life rings whilst you're awaiting the emergency services. Some of the additional safety suggestions that we would possibly put out there as well with regards to open water swimming. We'll mention acclimatisation. Before entering the water, assess the conditions. If the water's too rough for swimming, don't get in. Know your limits. Depending on the conditions, you may need to swim less or closer to the bank or shore. Enter the water slowly and allow time for your body to get used to the cold. Don't jump straight in. And the temperature of the air and water is also important. The colder the water and air temperature, the quicker you will cool down. The colder it is, the less time you should spend in the water. Be prepared. This is a very much a key part of open water swimming. Going for a swim in cold open water can be exhilarating, but it's not without risk. So if it's your first time in open water swimming or cold water dipping, it's important to speak to healthcare professionals to discuss risks of cold water immersion before you go, especially if you've got any underlying illnesses which may be made worse by going into the cold water. Always arrange to go with a buddy. Open water swimming is much more fun than someone else, and you can look out for each other. It's also good to tell someone on shore where you're going and when you'll be back. They'll be able to call help if you're overdue back, and consider joining an organised club or group. I think that's key for anybody starting new in this, is to make sure you join with a group, or a club would be what we would tend to signpost to. It just gives you that build up, and it allows you to prepare for seeing where your levels are and when you should be able to come out of the water, and to know what your body can take. Choose your swimming spot carefully. Do not swim in reservoirs unless there's clearly organised swimming sessions. Do not swim near lochs or weirs. If a sign says no swimming and or danger, don't swim there. Do check first. Pools change. What was safe last week could be dangerous this week. Do check safety signage in the area that you plan to swim, and do ensure that you have a safe egress from the water before getting in. And I know that there's a vast level of experience within this call tonight. Part of the considerations about where you're swimming is that you may have other people come in and believe they see you swimming, being an experienced swimmer, and think that it's safe for them to go in. So it's just to also be aware that there may be people around wanting to copy what you're doing who may be less experienced. Have the right equipment. Consider using a wetsuit. It will help you stay warm and increase your buoyancy so you can stay in the water for longer. Consider wearing a brightly coloured swimming hat or taking a tow float with you when swimming. Again, these can help you be seen in the water and can also be used to store items. And take a means of calling for help with you, such as a mobile phone and a waterproof pouch, or a whistle to attract attention. Knowing where you are is vitally important in case of an emergency. The emergency services will use what 3 words is worthwhile, I believe, if you are going to swim in a location, to take note of the what 3 words address before you go in. And if you do end up in an emergency situation, that will help direct you there. That can be the difference of getting the correct resources to you and the nearest resources to you. And in summary, be prepared, check the weather and tides, choose your spot, go with a buddy, have the right equipment and know how to get out. If in doubt, don't go out, no matter how much preparation you do or experience you have. If a swim doesn't feel right, there is no shame in getting out of the water straight away and not entering. Make sure you're acclimatised to avoid cold water shock. Be seen, consider wearing a bright coloured swim hat or using a tow float. Stay within your depths, float to live, and call 999 or 112 in an emergency. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Barry. I think that was a really important message at the end. And I think you're right that a lot of people here are very experienced in swimming and cold water ducking and go out in groups and stuff like that. But of course, Scotland has had an unfortunate past couple of years as well, where even the numbers have been higher, and we had a few tragedies around Loch Lomond just last year, I think, Barry, wasn't it? And it was, you know, I think that it's important that this information is always kept in mind. And I have to say, I think it's probably part of the argument why, you know, it's more important that groups such as Mike and Rachel talked about there have become more and more important, because what we don't want is folk are into this now, and what we don't want is folk going out themselves. I had the experience once. I said I've been doing it from April, and I've always managed to get a buddy together, but I went up to the loch that we used once, and my friend cancelled on me, but I was already up there and I was feeling that need that other people have talked about to get that endorphin rush, if you talk about it. And I sat there and I seriously contemplated it, and I thought, no, I won't. And I got back in the car and left. But it did cross my mind to go for it, because I thought, well, I've done it a few times now, I'm only ducking, I'm not actually swimming. But no, I didn't actually do it. So I think that taking somebody with you is always really, really important, and that's in the group. Yeah, groups are even better. Okay, so we've came to the end of the presentation. We don't actually have too long left, but what I did want to, I'll go through a couple of the questions that that came up in the chat. Somebody mentioned a wetsuit, and this is something that actually comes up quite a lot. I'm going to go over to you with it, Mark, maybe yourself and Mike. Obviously, if you're going in swimming for a long time, you should wear a wetsuit, and we've seen that in the safety advice here. But in terms of the benefits of cold water, how long do you need without a wetsuit, or can you get it with a wetsuit? This is a question that even as I've become more into this, I'm getting even on a personal basis from friends, especially as the winter's coming in. Mark, I wonder if you can take that one briefly, because that did come up in the chat.
Yeah, I can do. So essentially, what you get from cold water, the effect of the cold water is dependent on two things: how cold the water is and how quickly you become cold. So if you have a wetsuit on, it's probably not quite as cold, and it's probably you don't get as cold as quickly, but you're still getting cold. You're still you're still getting cold. You're still cooling quickly, and you're putting your face in the water. You're out in nature, all this kind of thing. So probably not as effective as without a wetsuit, but still absolutely brilliant.
Thanks very much, Mark. I don't know, Mike, Rachel, if that's something that you want to come in on, or if you feel Mark's covered it, that's okay as well.
I'd just like to say, yeah, I think that to go into the water, no matter what, is brilliant, and you've got to be safe. And there are people with less body fat who cool down quicker, so therefore a wetsuit, it's better to go in than not go in at all. I would say with the chill groups, some of the stuff that we cover is to do with their people's body image, and they don't want to show their body and stuff like that. And you find that if one person wears a wetsuit, next week they'll all wear a wetsuit. So within our group, we try and ask people not to wear a wetsuit for that very reason. I remember that Caroline, who was featured quite heavily with Mark, she just couldn't believe that she was asking us to get into a swimsuit and go in, and after about 5 or 6 sessions, she was like, so happy. And for her, that was a big part of the process. So in our groups, we prefer not to, but as Mark says, better that than not going in.
Okay, thanks very much. And another question that came up was the amount of time required, and I think you actually answered it, Mark. You were saying about three minutes is enough for most people, and then beyond that, it's it's recreational and to be safe. Would that be right, Mark? Can you respond?
Yeah. I mean, it depends on the temperature. Again, the important thing is just getting in the water, really. And I say as a rough rule, 3 minutes. Put your face in 3 times. It's really, you just need to stay long enough that you get past. Barry was kind of hinting at it as well. You get past that 3 to 5 minutes, and your breathing comes back in, and it's like 1 to 2 minutes when it's really cold. It's 3. It just takes a little while to recombobulate yourself, and when your breathing is back under control, you go past that initial shock, and you feel, okay, it's all right now. That's long enough. You've done 80%. You've got 80% of the benefit from there, and beyond that, you're then, depending on how cold it is, of course, you are beginning to risk problems with hypothermia or whatever. I mean, it takes a while, but my point is, the kind of Wim Hof approach of like as cold as you can, as long as you can, is to my mind is dangerous, and it's all wrong. It's great, get in the water, encourage people to get in the water, and he does that, and that's fantastic. But it's you just don't need to be in very long to get the benefits. So why push it? Why tear that muscle rather than just build it up?
Thanks, Mark. It's great that I didn't invite Wim Hof along to the online event today then. Only kidding. No, that's great. Calum, just want to come in here.
Yeah, I just want to jump in and quickly say to anyone who's got the question about swimming in skin without a wetsuit or with a wetsuit, one thing that can make a massive difference in winter is keeping your extremities warm, so that's your hands, your feet and your head. So whether that's wearing neoprene gloves and socks, which a lot of people will do, and maybe a bubble hat, we're seeing people saying that, or even keeping your head out of the water. A lot of people do that in winter. That can be really important. It's also kind of a practical thing because you've got to get changed afterwards, and getting in and out, getting out of the water with like numb feet and numb hands can be a really horrible experience. And actually physically getting changed with numb hands can be really horrible and make it harder and make kind of warming up harder. So keeping your extremities comfortable is also really important as well.
Thanks very much, Calum. I've got a question here on the emergency services from Alex that I'll come to in a wee minute for yourself, Barry. But another question that I get asked before that I did give Mark a wee bit of heads up on yesterday was just so that I wasn't catching him cold, excuse the pun. But it was about some people have asked about the effects on long COVID. Long COVID's becoming more and more apparent in my inbox, particularly actually affecting younger people. Believe it or not, there's a lot of campaigning around that. Is this anything that you're seeing in your research, either through the studies or anecdotally, Mark, or anybody else that wants to come in?
Yeah, there is a bit of anecdotal evidence. There's a story on the BBC. Yeah, there are a couple of stories. Yeah, there's certainly one for a Derbyshire woman on the BBC website, and there are a couple of other anecdotal stories of people using it for long COVID. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, there's not enough. I mean, there's a really good theoretical basis for it. I think people with long COVID have to be. There are other conditions where I don't think you need to be quite so careful about it. I'm not quite so sure with them. Yeah, I don't think going in super cold would be good in the first instance. I think for them it'd be really important to go in when it's sort of 15 degrees plus maybe. But as I mentioned in my talk, this is all about inflammation. I think this, like with fibromyalgia, like with chronic pain, by reducing the inflammation in the body overall, it might increase it just slightly when you get into the water. But that overall effect of reducing inflammation is got a lot of potential benefit. I think this is somewhere that would be fantastic to research. I think you can have a lot of benefits very quickly and very simply.
Thanks, Mark.
I'd like to add there that anecdotally we've had a couple of people with long COVID who have done the 8-week course, and they were obviously not bedridden, they were fine, but they were exhausted and they had low energy levels. And anecdotally, both those people felt a lot better by the end of that 8-week course than before.
That's great, Mike. Thanks very much for that. I've only got time to take another couple of questions, but one that's been re-asked, I think, Calum, you did try and address it. You maybe seen it on the chat, but maybe if somebody else has got any thoughts on it, it's given that the vast majority of cold water swimmers are women. Is there specific research going on as how it benefits women, why this might be the case? And I can certainly say that the couple of groups that I've joined locally, when I see the pictures, it does really seem to be probably a 70 to 30%, and the 30% of the max, probably maybe even 80 to 20% ratio women to men. Is there any reason for that? That you've came across, and I'll pass that on to anybody, maybe Rachel or Mark or whoever.
Hi. I think one of the things that encourages a lot of women to swim that we've heard from our community is that when they get to, oh my God, help me now, words, God again. Menopause, thank you, brain. The menopause and getting hot flushes. I think something that really helps is going in cold water. I think that's like quite, it happens to a lot of women of a certain age. I think they find cold water swimming particularly helpful for that. And again, maybe it's about safe spaces, and women maybe want to be around other women, and that's okay too, I think. I don't know, I'll pass on to Mark, who probably has more expert thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think Well, it's interesting. I was asked this question at the Edinburgh Science Festival a few years ago, and one of the women in the audience came up with the thing. Yeah, we just see the hot water, see the cold water, and we're feeling hot, and it just looks so tempting. And there's a great Zoe Lyons video about comedian Zoe Lyons, which is a great video about women swimming in Brighton, and the steam coming off. But anyway, I think there's another point is, I mean, there's no specific research on this, but women tend to suffer more from, if you look at the distribution of these inflammatory conditions, women tend to suffer more from them. So that might be another reason. And it's interesting what you say, Rachel, about body image, because Hannah, who's one of the people I've done a lot of research with, she says her experience of it is that women like to go into the, it's probably once you're in the water, you're generally away from people. Even she said even when she was training for the Brighton Marathon, going through the streets, you just get hassle basically. But once you're in the sea, you're safe, and the whole body image goes away. And in fact, I've heard other swimmers say, what they love is being able to pass on to their children. One woman said, "I love to pass on my children that being slightly overweight, it's actually a good thing. It makes me stronger in the water." And she's absolutely right. It does make you stronger in the water. So it can have benefits. So there's all these positive things that you're getting back from the warmth that maybe you don't get with your sort of typical male distribution beer gut. And this is the thing. So women have a more even distribution of fat over their body, and that makes them super cold swimmers, as in super at swimming in the cold.
Thanks, Mark, for that. I will just be able to take one more question because I want to do a wee summing up about where we might go, and that is just one for yourself, Barry. I wouldn't leave you out. No, answer my question. So, Alex Cameron-Smith in the chat, various emergency rescue services have spoken out against what 3 words may recommend West locate instead. We can see it there, also registering your phone for the text 999. If people have hypothermia or cannot speak, surely it's easier to click a locate button than try 3 words. Have you got any thoughts, Barry?
Certainly, I'm not 100% sure about the other apps that are there. I know that What3 Apps is supported by us. A lot of the signage that's going up around the waterways now will have the What3 word location on the sign and a grid reference on the signage around there, which should back up. But we are getting there with signage and getting it so that people know. But even just a basic location, it doesn't have to be down to that square meter, but even if you know what side of a loch that you're on and what end, could be a massive difference for the response of the fire service and any other emergency service.
Thanks very much, Barry. Okay, on that note, and I think that was a good note to end, and I'm sorry that we couldn't get all the questions in, but we are now at 10 to 8. I want to thank all the speakers for tonight. I think all of you have been absolutely fantastic, especially Rachel's 3 volunteers. I think coming and speaking in the way you did was absolutely brilliant, and I think that it's a testament to all the work that all of you have done. I guess the question is, where do we go from here? I'm just trying to read the chat as we're going along. Stature in the schools, the swimming in schools, I think is definitely a big thing as well. That's something that I'm very much a supporter of. But what I did want to say is that where do we go with this from here? So look out for next year. We're actually going to have an in-person event hosted by Swimming Scotland. We're looking at a date in March, and that'll be again something similar to what we've done today, but again we'll have more evidence and more there'll be more processes taking place within the Parliament I'll be able to speak about in a wee second that we'll be able to take to that event. So I know that myself and Mark have been working on it, and I'll make sure that the other speakers here are also invited, and everybody who's came tonight, we'll make sure that you get an invite to that once we get dates and stuff in. Please do feel free to come along to the Parliament in Edinburgh, and we'll have a great night. But of course there will be remote options for folk who can't make it. What I want to do in between that period is I've already started asking the government some questions about this, and we've got actually quite the initial question asked was quite an open response. They did really just say that they, in terms of individualised therapy, if you like, for calling it that, is they more refer to the nice guidelines, but they were quite happy to to send me to that, and they didn't seem opposed to it, which I think is very important. And we also want to contact NHS boards about what more they can do, particularly with courses like the chill course and the mental health swims. How can these be more utilised, and perhaps keep some people, as Rachel said, I think we do need to be clear in saying that, how maybe keep some people away from primary care services, which are obviously struggling. The vast amount of anecdotal evidence on this is amazing. We all now know lots of people who swear by it. I know tons of people now, just even over the last 6 months, who actually really swear by it. And also, as we've heard from Mark, there's more and more research building up that evidence base, and I know there's the larger study ongoing right now, and I guess we're all hoping that that will also be positive, as was the smaller one for 50 odd people. So that's that's all work ongoing. But we're just really wanting to start a conversation. That's what tonight's about. We've got good people on the call, as I said at the start. There's people there who I'm sure will leave this call tonight and go away and think about things and think about how this can possibly be more integrated into a more public health approach. And of course, as Barry said as well, we've got to caution that against how, if we're promoting something like this, how it's done safely. And I think that's why it's really good to have the groups on board, because it sounds like these groups that we've heard about tonight, Chill, Mental Health Swims and others, do really provide that safe environment. I've been quite happy for the promotions tonight, Mark's book, the Mental Health Swims, Chill course, and Calum as well. I think that is all very fair. Please use these people as good resources, and we'll certainly be hearing more from them. As I say, I'm sorry, it kind of feels as if you get to a really good day at an event like this, and you feel you kind of end up rushing the end. And I hope folk don't feel like that, and it's maybe just in my own mind. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my email address on right now. I've already typed it out, ready to go. I have seen some people ask me some questions about swimming in school. Somebody was wanting to speak to me about making Scotland a focal point for the world. Please just contact me in that email address. I'm not going to be able to address all these issues tonight. Get in touch with me by email, and I will get back to you. And please be assured that I'm working closely with Mark, Mike, Rachel, Calum, Barry, and others. This is only the start of the road with this, and we will keep it up in Parliament. And over time, you might even see questions going into ministers and stuff like that. As more and more people become interested in it. I have to say, the interest from other MSP offices has been significant. We do events like this quite regularly, and the interest can vary depending on the topic, but there was quite a wide range in interest. We actually got some MSPs who wanted to do their own graphic for the event to publicise it to their own communities and stuff as well. So we do know that some MSPs have sent their offices and that tonight as well. So I'm really looking forward to hearing their feedback as well, and gathering a bit of cross-party support as it stays within the Parliament. Okay, does that sound all right for everybody? And I hope you all have a lovely night. And for anybody that's watching the football, it starts in 3 minutes, so enjoy. And I'll see you all soon. Thanks very much again.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Thanks
Cheers.
for sorting it.
Thank you. Goodbye.